Hey everybody, thanks again for tuning into the Zimm Geek channel. I am your host, Randy Zimmerman, and in this video I really want to give an end wrap-up explanation about Flint Comix and Entertainment. That was a comics and entertainment newspaper, almost like an alternative paper that I produced and distributed throughout my local area, which is the Genesee County and Flint, Michigan area. And I'm sure you all know about Flint. You've heard it in the news. We've had water problems. We've had economic problems. We've had GM come in and go out and come back in. Oh, well, political problems too. It's been one problem after the next. But for the last 10 years, from 2009 to 2019, I produced a funny book paper that people could just walk up to at their local family restaurant or library, bookstore, or comic shop and pick up for free. I even had a set of red boxes all throughout the area where you just walk up once a month, take a funny book paper and take it home with you, or take it to work with you and leave it in your john, or leave it on your nightstand or in your living room or wherever, and come back to at your leisure and have fun escaping, reading comics, a few entertainment articles and columns, and just to get away from the humdrum and the everyday life, especially here in depressing little Flint, Michigan. Now, if you haven't seen my 5th video where I really get in and describe what Flint Comix and Entertainment was, I really invite you to go back and look at that, because that has a lot about the beginning of the paper, my opening inspiration as to why I started the paper. But that's not why I want to do this video. This video, I want to explain not just why I did the paper or why I shut down the paper, but more importantly, what the paper meant for me and why I think it's important that everybody out there be aware of this paper, despite what the comics media and the comic market in general don't want you to know. So let me tell you about my baby. Hang on. Like I mentioned in the previous videos, I started the paper really because I was fed up with having to deal with the direct market. And it wasn't dealing with the retailers or dealing with other publishers that was the problem. It was the distributor, Diamond, who kept moving their goalposts, changing their rules, moving their hoops around, and causing us more and more grief every month. It had gotten to the point where they were literally dictating to us what titles we could or could not print that they would or would not distribute, even though we knew that there was a quality to what we were producing, and the fact that people would read it and people would buy it if they just knew that it was out there. And Diamond seemed to be doing everything in their power to keep that from happening and promote their so-called exclusives. So really, I got out of the business completely about 2004, decided I was not going to be a part of this anymore because it was just ridiculous trying to deal with these hoops. But man, once you print comics get into your blood. Once you start producing it, you get that passion. You want to tell stories. You want to see your stories received and read and enjoyed by people, no matter how big or how small your audience was. And like I mentioned before in the earlier video, I became an editorial cartoonist and ran the cartoons in a local political paper. And that's where I got the inspiration of really doing Flint Comix and decided to start kicking it out. And once we did, realized how low really the overhead was to do it. Because if you look at a copy of Flint Comix, you'll see there's no slick cover. There's no staples to it. It was just it's set up like a newspaper, meant to be fun, meant to be read, meant to be destroyed, rolled up, used as to line the bottom of bird cages or strung in the bathrooms or wherever. That was really the pure joy of this paper. I can't tell you how fulfilling it was for me just to walk into a john at a local bar and see it strung across a handicapped stall, or to walk into a friend's house and see it sitting on a shelf next to their toilet or in their bookcase or their nightstand or whatever. That was the true reason for this paper. That was my motivation for doing the paper initially. And honestly, it reinstilled my love of sequential art and the art form in general by doing the paper and doing it for as long as we did and getting the reception that I got. Even though it was local, I had more people reading this paper locally than I had ever reading anything that I was producing as Arrow Comics that was going throughout the world. And I mean by a huge margin, because I was lucky to move 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 copies of a comic through the direct market, but I was moving 9,000 to 9,500, sometimes 9,800 copies of this paper just in my county. And our distribution only went from Birch Run to Holly, and then from Wausau to Davison. So it was a very small group. We figured there was maybe 250,000 people here in the area. Maybe a little more than that. But then, we were just coming out of an economic slump as it was. Then we had the water problem. Then we had all this political problems, and all of these corporations and the bigger businesses around in the area had changes in marketing directors who all decided that print was not the way they wanted to go and couldn't completely wrap their head around a funny book paper. Don't ask me why it was so hard. Every editorial I was constantly pointing at the Avengers movies or the other comic media that was coming out and becoming super popular, and here we were doing a paper using local talent, a few syndicated strips like Popeye and Judge Dredd, and just making a fun paper every month, and I was having a hard time keeping its head above water just to make ends meet. And we scrimped and we saved on this paper, and we were able to get it through 100 good, solid issues. And really, the reason I stopped it wasn't because the overhead was too hard to reach. Like I said, this thing was cheaply put together. It just got to be a lot to do all the time, and really fraying mentally on me about constantly trying just to meet the overhead. And it seemed additionally frustrating because of our low overhead to start with, but also the fact that we weren't really pulling any profit out of this. In the meantime, I had an ad that was constantly running in every issue advertising my commercial art business, which had just picked up like crazy. In fact, from the months of January to about April, there was very little time that I had that I could even concentrate on the paper. And the paper usually took about 4 days to really put together, and another day or two to do my end of the distribution. Even though we had paid a guy or paid a service to go through and distribute the majority of the paper for us, there were still some areas that I personally wanted to do. I just wanted to keep that personal aspect of the paper to myself. Plus, it was a lot of fun to do. And the really frustrating fact, not just the fact that we couldn't keep the advertisers in, but because I knew we were out there and I knew we were being read. I had people calling me if I didn't have the paper on the stands by the 7th or 8th of the month that I had never heard from before, asking me where the paper was. I started a Facebook page, and that's a whole nother story, Facebook and their wonderful algorithms, where I was telling people the book's in production, the book's about to go to press, the book's going to press, I've got copies of the book, the paper's being distributed all the time. You go back on the Flint Comix Facebook page and you'll see it. Yeah, I posted the cover the day before the book went to the printer, just so everybody would know what the image on the cover would look like, so that when they were walking down the street, they would see if the new cover was out or not, and pick up the latest issue. It was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And our fans were unbelievable. In fact, I was throwing conventions once in April and then again in the fall, not just to help make our overhead for the paper, but to also thank our readers, because they were so devoted, so loyal, and so regular. After a while, I even got to the point where I was asking for personal sponsorships, almost like crowdfunding, and was getting $200 or $300 a month from different people just to help go for our overhead. And I have to tell you, every penny of that went to the overhead of the paper. Every one. And I'm very proud to say that. So after a while, the commercial business got to be so heavy, and we weren't picking up the advertising, even though I had a great salesperson out there who was trying her best to go out there and find more people to advertise with. Then it got to a point, especially after the water crisis happened, where we would pick up advertisers who would not pay their bills, just one after the next. And it got to be such a frustration for me that at 100 started looking like a good goal post to hit, and to stop doing the paper. It just got to be too much. And plus, with the commercial work, and with me aching to do other things and to tell other stories, it wasn't really a hard decision. It was a bittersweet decision, though, to decide to stop the paper at issue number 100. But we're still keeping the conventions going. The conventions are going strong. In fact, I just got invited a few weeks ago. We held one up in Saginaw because our Flint shows were going so well. I got invited by a marketplace up in Saginaw to throw one that was even bigger than the ones that we throw in Flint. It was really crazy. So the big personal reward for me in regards to this paper wasn't just a financial one. See, that I was running an ad in every issue of the paper and was getting a lot of commercial work. So I knew our ads were successful, despite what everybody else was thinking of these new marketers fresh out of college deciding that digital was the way to go and that print might be dead. Print was not dead. Comics are such an accessible art form. And I'm telling you, people love comics. Everybody loves comics except for those few people without a sense of humor. And there's more and more people that humor is just not quite accessing them without them being offended or getting their feelings ticked off or whatever. But a lot of these strips that we were doing, all of the humor that we were running is really timeless. All of these comics, all of these editions of the book or the paper that I did are like little time capsules that talk about the stuff that was going around in town at the day, or that had contributions from our local folks showing their stuff off in the paper. I'm proud of each and every issue that we did, and the farther along we got, quite frankly, the better the paper became. So the real point that I want to get out here, the thing that I want everybody to know, is I voluntarily stopped this paper. And if you look at 100, I did a big back-end editorial where I explained this. It was so good to actually make the decision to stop instead of being forced to stop. The conventions were still keeping our head just barely above water. My savings, whenever I had to tap into them, luckily were there because of all of the commercial work that I was getting. The paper could have gone on, but I made the physical choice to stop it because I have a bucket list, and I have a lot of things, especially sequentially, in regards to sequential art, that I really want to do and really want to get done, and I'm just now getting to the point where I'm able to concentrate on that. Plus, I really want to do this YouTube channel. I really want to concentrate on it, even though it doesn't look like I've been putting a lot of content up there lately. I have been channeling a lot of time, making a lot of notes. I know exactly where I'm going with the channel here in the upcoming future, and I hope, sincerely hope, that you'll tag along with me here on the YouTube and listen as we cover a lot more things that I've been doing and that I feel about as far as sequential art goes, and how just totally redeemable this entertainment art form is and can be, and how important it is that the people that are passionate about doing it actually get a chance to do it and a chance to be seen, a chance to be heard. I know this format, I know the Flint Comix newspaper format is viable. It's very viable. You can keep it running. I ran it for 10 years in an economically distressed Flint. And our big motto was always, if it can work in Flint, it can work anywhere. And I know any place that's more economically sound than Flint, which really in the country is probably everybody or every place else, very few places are more economically distressed than Flint, that this paper can be viable, make a profit, make people livings if they just want to channel the time and the energy, gather the ads, gather the following, and give it the attention that it needs and deserves. So to capsulate all of this, it's time. It's time for us independent people to stand up, the people that don't want to deal with these mainstream idiots, who want to do commercial art, who want to do sequential art, who want to do comics, to get our asses up there and start experimenting. This paper is viable. There are other formats out there that you can do to get comics out to the masses, and the masses desperately want to be entertained. They just don't want to be entertained by the crap that's out there right now. There has to be a way to help the retailers and keep them alive. There has to be a way to keep this art form rolling and running. There's a lot of ways out there to do it. You just have to find it. Crowdfunding is just one possibility. Doing this paper is another one. And I totally hope that somebody decides to start a paper somewhere just to keep that going, just to show how viable this format is, and how doing a comics paper, even a local comics paper, an alternative paper, is a way. It's a way to get sequential art out to people. It's a way to entertain people, and it's a viable way, and can be a very profitable way to make a living. So in the end, I want to let you know I'm here. I'm available. If you need a consultant, I've got a lot of foresight into doing this paper. I kept it alive for 10 years in Flint, buddy. I can do it. You can do it. You just have to want to do it and get out there, do the work, do the research, understand your market, your publisher. You can do a paper like this. Seriously. You don't have to deal with Diamond. You don't have to deal with the direct market. And one thing that I found out with this paper that's so awesome, you can help your local comic shop out at the same time by promoting them as well in every issue of your paper. One of the cool things about this paper is that I picked up advertising from just about every local comic shop in a 50-mile radius. At one point or another, I had everybody advertising through this paper. My next video is going to be a cartoon instructional, and then after that we're going to get back into more stuff to do because I've got so much more to tell you and so much more to talk about. So until next time, hey, thanks a lot. I hope this video was good for you. It was very therapeutic for me in the end, and I hope you stick with me. And subscribe, tell your friends, have them subscribe as well. Take care. Until next time, thanks a lot for being here. See ya.